So what are you doing here in Oslo, Danny?
I'm the International Director of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which means I get to travel to exciting places like Oslo. And I'm here because one of the things that we try to do in our organization is to understand and kind of mitigate the effects of surveillance and other human rights violating technology on vulnerable groups. And this is sort of a collection of some of the most potentially vulnerable people in the world, because they're activists and dissidents who are opposing governments and other authorities that have that kind of power to surveil or use technology against individuals.
And without naming names, maybe you could tell us one of the interesting stories that's happened this week?
Sure. So I've been actually at this event for a number of years, and every time I've come, there's always been some interesting scenario that's played out. Like one of the first years I was here, what we assume is the Chinese state used the contact list of someone who was attending this to email a bunch of other people and send malware, pretending to be the organizers of this conference. Mm-hmm. So it's a particularly vulnerable bit. Another year, we actually found someone with malware, spyware on their computer, placed there by presumably their main the people who didn't like what they were doing, which was the Angolan government. This year, I've been talking to someone who's in an interesting situation. Usually when we see surveillance and the interception of communications, you don't know it's happening, right? Because the people who have those capabilities like to keep it close to their chest. And in fact, in the United States, what we see is something called parallel construction, which is you collect evidence through a surveillance program, and then you use that to kind of find evidence somewhere else that lets you convincingly say, oh, we didn't spy on them, we just happened to look into the right letter at the right time or visit the right place. Mm-hmm. And this particular case, though, this was an activist who was protesting or working against a Latin American government, and they actually emailed her funders with a recording of a conversation that she'd had in a private place, and photographs from her phone. So this
Which I hear is a common scare tactic,
right?
Especially in South America.
So this is the chilling effect writ very large, right? Uh-huh. The idea of this is to intimidate someone, and also perhaps alienate them from their donors. Although, frankly, everybody funding this organization wrote back immediately to her and said, "You seem to be doing very good work, right? Because these people are obviously very upset with you." What's interesting about this is it gives us evidence of intrusion, right? It gives us something concrete to work on. And one of the benefits, I think, of dealing with surveillance that works on your device, when somebody hacks into your device and takes it over, is there is at least a possibility of evidence. Mm-hmm. You can sit there and we can take that software, we can sit down with it, we can take it apart, and we can find the bug, right? Yep. It's the equivalent of doing a bug scan and like finding this thing, and you go, something happened, right? Somebody sat and planted this bug. That's not an advantage we have with most systems of mass surveillance, because most systems of mass surveillance in digital technology are completely passive, which is to say that they never interfere with the numbers, the bits and bytes that flow through. You hear the conversation that I'm having with you with perfect clarity. There's no clicks or clunks on the line when somebody's listening. There's just they're just making a copy, right? There's just something that goes off. And for that kind of surveillance, it's very hard to prove or collect evidence. It's one of the reasons why whistleblowers have been so important in this fight, because it needs someone who was there and saw that fork in the road, that data being taken off, and can collect evidence at this point and come back and talk to people about it. Right. You'll never know. You never know.
So this bug was obviously from a less sophisticated government or organization, likely, or they just felt like, what's your theory there then?
It speaks to impunity. So we see this kind of behavior in societies where the people doing it feel very confident that they're not going to go to jail or punished for it, right? And at that point, they don't care, right? Like they don't mind who knows. And actually, it's always interesting to watch a society begin to fall that way. I mean, I'll give an example, right? In Russia, right? There's been a period over the last few years where initially, if there were threats, if there were surveillance, if this stuff was going on, it all had a kind of plausible deniability about it. It would be very hard to prove. And then in recent sort of months and years, it's become much more blatant. People don't really care. Honestly, I sort of worry that the sort of stuff that we see in the United States has that feel the same way, and that you know, it used to be that at least there was a sort of model of rule of law to the whole process, and the more that you are able to conduct this kind of surveillance and then sufficiently brush off the accusation that it's a violation of statutory laws about surveillance, constitutional protections for privacy, the more blatant it becomes.
Glad I asked you that question. That's an interesting perspective.
And they're temporary periods. You know,
I like that. They're temporary periods. That makes me feel better.
I like to think of it as a positive thing.